If you're about to head into the studio or you're just thinking about booking some time, here are 7 practical tips you absolutely need to know before you set foot in front of a mic. Let's go! Number 7, determine your budget ahead of time and have the funds accessible. So the first thing you need to do before you even look for a studio to work with is determine your budget. Work with your bandmates and determine how much everyone is willing to commit. If you know what your budget is ahead of time, the conversation with the studio owner or engineer will be much easier. Also remember that studio time doesn't end when you or your band stop recording. You still need to pay for the time the engineer spends mixing your music, and there's usually an additional cost for mastering as well. Number 6, define your goals. Decide what you want to accomplish with your time in the studio. Do you want to make an entire album? An EP? Just a single? Are you just looking to throw together some demo material to use to get more live shows, or are you ready to create your first radio-ready single? Are you working towards sync, streaming services, radio play? Really, these first 2 tips go hand in hand. You can't expect to get a full-length radio-ready album on a shoestring budget, and it's not usually wise to choose the cheapest studio in the area either. Which brings us to number 5. Research the studio. If you've already booked your studio time, then find out everything you can about how the studio works. If there are multiple rooms, find out which room you'll be in, which engineers you'll be working with, what load-in and load-out procedures are like. If you've booked multiple days, find out what the policy is for leaving gear on the premises. You probably won't want to be lugging bass amps and drums in and out every day. If you haven't booked your studio time yet, you've got a lot of research to do. First, find a studio that's in a location you're comfortable with. Also, be sure the studio you're working with can give examples of work in your genre. You don't want to try to bring a rock band into a hip-hop focused studio. Similarly, if you're rapping, find a studio that specializes in that kind of production. While you're doing your research, make sure to figure out a few practical things like, how easy is parking near the studio? Do you have to carry equipment upstairs? Are there restaurants nearby? If the studio is far away from you, is there a hotel or Airbnb nearby? What's the studio's policy on food, drink, smoking, etc.? Once you've got the studio figured out, it's time to prepare for your session. The rest of these tips are all centered around preparing for the session itself. Alright, tip number 4, bring snacks and plenty of liquids. This is an easy one to overlook. It's pretty common to spend the entire day in the studio. If you're in the zone, nailing your parts and everything is really clicking, you may not want to take a lunch or dinner break. If you've got a few snacks packed away, protein or granola bars, fruit, etc., you can power through the session and knock out all those drum tracks. And always bring plenty of water. Many studios provide water, but it may be in limited supply, they may charge for it, or they may just not have any. It's good practice to bring your own supply. Hit up Costco and grab a case, especially if you're a vocalist. You're going to want to stay well hydrated in order to get the best out of your voice. Your voice isn't the only instrument you'll want to take care of, which brings us to point number 3. Alright, this is a big one. Check your gear. If you're a guitar or bass player, change your strings? Okay, fine. Your 7-year-old bass strings are probably still okay. But change your guitar strings. Check the intonation of your instrument. You may need a tech to help with that. Make sure your cables and pedals are in good working order. Make sure you know how your amp works if you're using one. If you're using software or plugins, make sure you understand those and you can navigate them quickly. Make sure you have extra batteries and extra cables. Bring more than one guitar if you have it. And don't forget a tuner. If you're a drummer, change your batter heads and tune the drums before you get to the studio. You can fine-tune them once you're there. Check with the studio to see if maybe you can get in early and set up your drums ahead of time. Make sure you have new quality drumsticks, more than just one pair, because you might break them. Make sure you bring a drum key with you. Bring along any accessories you may want to use, like a shaker, tambourine, cowbell, go-go bells, bongos, timpani. If you're using samples or tracks, make sure you have the actual track to give the engineer. Please don't come with just a link to a YouTube video. It's not the engineer's job to extract audio from YouTube. You should do that yourself before you come to the studio. And be sure to check the usage rights. Most tracks and beats require you to pay a fee to use them in your recordings. Failing to do this could result in your tracks being pulled from any streaming services they're on, and could even result in lawsuits or fines. It's your job to make sure you have the rights to use the tracks you bring into the studio. If you're a vocalist, warm up your voice before you get to the studio, but don't overdo it. Bring what you need to keep your voice healthy: water, tea, cough drops, etc. Number 2, finish writing before you get to the studio. This is a huge one. Writing a song on your couch at home or in your garage with your band doesn't cost you anything. Trying to finish writing a song in the studio could cost you hundreds, even thousands of dollars. Work out the arrangement, vocals and lyrics, timing, tempo, key, and all the individual parts well before you get to the studio. Even if you're using a producer in the studio, you should be able to nail a demo in a single take and work from that. Which brings us to the last, and in my opinion, one of the most important tips. Here it is, tip number 1. Practice, practice, practice. You should know your material forward and backward. Each member of the band should know exactly what they're going to play. Also, remember that a studio recording is going to be different than a live performance. The guitar player probably won't be stomping on his ODR1 right as you head into the chorus, but rather letting the verse ring out and then going back and tracking the chorus separately. Be prepared for those kinds of decisions, for multiple takes, layering, overdubs, and doubling parts. Overall, just be prepared. If you found a studio with great engineers, they'll help you through all of this. Many engineers are happy to work in the production role to a degree as well. They've seen a lot and worked with a lot of artists, and are glad to help however they can. The engineers are there to help you get the best result possible. And when you find a studio that you find easy to work with, stick with them. You'll get consistent results, and the music you make together will keep getting better over time. If you found these tips helpful, like this video and thump that subscribe button. It helps me out a ton, and it's a great way to make sure you get notified when I post a new video. If you're in the greater Philadelphia area and you're looking for a fantastic studio to work with, you can find us at playfireside.com. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, rock on.